My dear viewers, hello and welcome to a new episode of our program Africa Today. My name is Amal Mukhtar. Well, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli on Wednesday addressed the UN Climate Conference COP29 on the behalf of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and in his speech before the conference on its second day, Premier Madbouli have confirmed that Egypt aims at that COP29 would yield fruitful outcomes in light of climate change issues at the world level. We have more in the following report.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli has participated in the high-level segment of the 29th Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP29, in Baku, Azerbaijan, on behalf of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. During his participation, Madbouli attended a roundtable entitled Energy Enhancing Climate Change Mitigation Measures, where he intervened in this session in the presence of the Prime Ministers of Belgium and Slovakia, the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, and the U.S. Climate Envoy. Madbouli said that Egypt has done its utmost to provide the appropriate environment to implement our ambitious renewable energy goal, which is to reach 42% of the renewable energy mix by 2030. Regarding his expectations from COP29 and how its outcomes can help developing countries implement the mitigation elements of the global stocktake process and nationally determined contributions, Madbouli said that he believes that without the required support for developing countries to implement nationally determined contributions, these goals will remain on paper and not be achieved. He continued that they face enormous difficulties in achieving current conditional nationally determined contribution, as they have not received the required support to implement it. He added that increasing ambition in considering the new climate change mitigation elements of the first global climate stocktake process, while taking into account the national circumstances, paths and approaches, depends on achieving the current nationally determined contributions. On the sidelines of COP29, Madbouli met with several heads of state governments and international institutions. Mohammed al-Humusani, the official spokesperson for the cabinet, said that these meetings witnessed discussions on ways of cooperation in several files, including files related to combating climate change and the green transformation, and the depth of political and economic relations between Egypt and the countries participating in the summit was emphasized. The meetings discussed the significance of the United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change Summit as a crucial chance to strengthen cooperation mechanisms among various nations with the aim of achieving sustainability and identifying the responsibilities of the conflicting parties in addressing climate change issues.
Well, to shed more light on this, we have the pleasure to have with us over the phone our dear guest, Dr. Hassan Abul Naga, international water and climate expert and advisor of the Alliance for Global Water Adaptation. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure, sir. Well, Dr. Naga, how did you follow the speech by Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli on the behalf of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi before the COP29, as he stressed that Egypt aims that COP29 would yield fruitful outcomes in light of the climate change issues at the world level?
At COP29, Egypt is aiming high, targeting 42% renewable energy in its energy mix by 2030. Egypt is also focusing on creating an enabling environment for private investment in renewable through policies like fair and tariff and competitive bidding systems. But we are also clear that achieving these goals needs more international financial and technical support to improve infrastructure and meet their climate targets. Egypt also put water at the forefront of climate agenda during the COP27. So I think this event is really important. It's called that it's the money COP.
So, Dr. Naga, with Africa the least continent in the world responsible for any climate changes. Yet, African continent faces challenges concerning, severe challenges actually concerning the climate change. Would you give us an idea about this, please?
So climate change is really hitting Africa hard. So climate extremes such as droughts and the floods cost really the continent over $70 billion annually. And water and agriculture, which is also the backbone of the many African economies, they suffer the most, affecting for sure millions who depend on it for their livelihoods. Climate impacts also lead to displacement, worsening food insecurity, and putting pressure on already fragile infrastructure. And Egypt is really pioneering in its a key advocate for Africa, even though the continent contributes only 4% of the global emissions.
Yes.
So it's bearing the burden of climate change.
Yes, Dr. Naga, despite that Africa is full of natural resources also, still it is facing challenges. What's your comment on this?
So, as I said, Egypt is really a strong advocate for more international financial support. We are calling for the developed world to meet its $100 billion annual climate finance with these promises, and looking for innovative solutions like debt for climate swaps. This would allow the African countries to access the funding they need to tackle the climate change and their developmental challenges.
Yes, yes. With the role of Egypt played in the region, Egypt is speaking during this summit, is speaking Africa also. So give us an idea about this.
So Egypt is backing the idea of new quantitative collective goal in the CGQ, which is mainly to ensure that developing countries get the climate finance they need. Egypt also is stressing that Africa alone faces a $200 billion annual financial gap, and they are calling for more accessible and reliable funding that matches the continent's needs and its critical role in global sustainability.
Yes. During his word before the COP29, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli said that Egypt have hosted the COP27 and to push forward efforts aimed at implementing many solutions concerning the climate issues. How did you read his words?
So I think what the Prime Minister has been emphasizing on the role of finance in order to meet the global agendas on climate is really very important, especially for Africa. And for Egypt, this is really key because global targets should reflect the reality that developing countries are balancing the need for climate adaptation while striving for economic growth. And COP29 is really an opportunity to secure commitments that are not just ambitious, but also achievable, especially when it comes to financial support and capacity building for these countries.
Yes. Also, Dr. Naga, a fresh draft of a UN climate deal have been released on Wednesday, proposing concrete options in order to raise the funding for needy or poor countries. However, still leaves unresolved sticking points that have long been delayed an agreement.
Yes, I think this is a major challenge when it comes to the commitments during any COP, and it's really important in this at the COP29 that this commitment turns into real projects. And for Egypt and Africa, for instance, this means for them mobilizing finance for renewable energy, for scaling up resilience efforts, and also have many adaptation projects, especially in areas of water and agriculture, and really ensuring that the countries stick to their pledges they have made. Regular assessments and real accountability will be vital to make sure that the progress is really made.
Yes, so Egypt worked to attract private investment in the renewables is impressive. So could these strategies offer the model for other African countries, Dr. Naga?
Yes, absolutely. Egypt's strategy is really to attract private investment in renewable energy. Is a great example with the feed-in tariff and also the solution that we could provide. They are really, they have been able to attract billions in investment. This approach for sure will show how clear policies and strong commitment to renewables can really pay off. Something other nations for sure can definitely replicate.
Yes, I thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your valuable information. Dr. Hassan Abu Naga, international water and climate change expert and advisor of the Alliance for Global Water Adaptation. Thank you very much for joining us over the phone. Ladies and gentlemen, a short break, and I'm going to be back with you. Well, during COP29, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli and Azeri counterpart have explored ways to strengthen bilateral cooperation, and Madbouli have highlighted Egypt's interest in expanding investments and trade exchanges with Azerbaijan. The details in the following report.
Mustafa Madbouli said that Egypt looks forward to increasing investment and trade exchange with Azerbaijan. The Prime Minister said that the government also seeks to activate joint cooperation in many domains, topped by energy, transport, and the pharmaceutical industry through the exchange of visits between businessmen to explore economic, trade, and investment areas. The Prime Minister's statements came during a meeting with his Azeri counterpart Ali Astov on the outlines of the COP29. Madbouli hailed the warm welcome he received in Azerbaijan and the level of cooperation and relations between the two sides. He pointed out that Egyptian-Azeri Joint Committee will convene in Q1 of 2025 to explore cooperation in the fields of agriculture, industry, energy, petroleum, and pharmaceuticals. For his part, Astov welcomed Madbouli, hailing cooperation between the two countries in various domains, and welcomed Egypt's proposal to convene a joint committee meeting. Azeri Minister of Defense Industries Mustafa Yov and Egyptian Ambassador in Bakau Hisham Nagy received Madbouli at Haidar Aliyev International Airport upon his arrival. Madbouli is accompanied by Environment Minister Yasmin Fouad. The Premier delivered a speech on behalf of President Sisi on Wednesday.
Well, the UN Climate Change Executive Secretary Simon Stial have warned that the climate crisis have evolved from a future concern into the present economic threat, labeling it an economy killer. Stial have explained that climate impacts are cutting off up to 55% of GDP in some nations, inflating costs for businesses. The details in the following report.
UN Climate Change Executive Secretary Simon Stial warned at the COP29 World Leaders Climate Action Summit that the climate crisis is no longer a threat to future generations, but a present danger to economies worldwide. Stial said that they used to talk about climate action as being mostly about saving future generations, but there has been a seismic shift in the global climate crisis because the climate crisis is fast becoming an economy killer. He emphasized that climate impacts are already cutting up to 5% of GDP in many countries, turning the crisis into a cost of living issue that drives up costs for households and businesses. Stial warned that worsening climate impacts will put inflation on steroids unless every country can take bolder climate action. He drew parallels to the COVID-19 pandemic, highlighting the consequences of delayed collective action. He urged participants to learn the lessons from the pandemic when billions suffered because they didn't take collective action fast enough. He added that climate finance is global inflation insurance. Style called for immediate action, emphasizing that ignoring the issue risks economic and social catastrophe. He also highlighted the potential for economic growth and opportunity through climate action. Style urged leaders to demand strong outcomes at COP29, including a global climate finance goal and new national climate targets and plans. Despite the urgency, Style expressed optimism about the international cooperation necessary to address climate change.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, with this we come to the end of our episode. My name is Amal Mukhtar. Thank you for watching.